I still remember the exact sound, a single beep from the server room that shouldn't have happened. It was quiet, almost polite. The kind of noise that whispers before it screams. Back then, I was just Eli Tran, senior systems analyst at Virion Technologies, a polished glass tower where efficiency mattered more than people, and where smiles were just another line item in the employee handbook. I loved that job though. Not because of the pay, but because I believed in order, clean code, stable systems, and the simple magic of making things work. My boss, Daniel Holt, didn't care much for order. He cared about optics. The man could charm investors with a single PowerPoint slide and crush a junior dev in the same breath. Still, I respected him. Everyone did. He was the kind of leader who called you buddy, while quietly calculating your replacement. Daniel had this way of making chaos look like progress. He'd strut into meetings with his cufflinks flashing and promise the impossible. Faster systems, cheaper servers, AI-powered uptime. Meanwhile, I was the one patching holes in his innovations, with midnight coffee and duct tape code. But I stayed loyal. For 3 years. I told myself that loyalty mattered, that if I just proved my worth, he'd see me as more than the guy behind the firewall. I even covered for him once, when a cost-saving upgrade nearly corrupted a client database. I fixed it quietly, no credit, no complaint. Because that's what professionals do. Right? Then came Project EOS, Daniel's golden ticket to promotion. A complete infrastructure overhaul that he sold to the board as fail-proof. He wanted it live by Friday. No test environment, no fallback. I told him it wasn't ready. Eli, trust me, he said, flashing that boardroom grin. You worry too much. It'll be fine. And because I'd built my entire career on being the reliable one, I nodded. But something didn't sit right that week. The servers ran hotter than usual. Subtle, like a fever you try to ignore. Log entries began disappearing without explanation. And Daniel. He stopped copying me on deployment emails. One night, I stayed late to run a manual check. The office was dark except for the blue hum of the racks. That's when I noticed it. A new directory buried in the back end. No access logs. No permissions. No owner. Just one cryptic name /EOS_root/. I hovered over it, pulse thudding. And in that moment, that single breath before I clicked, I realized something I didn't want to believe. Daniel wasn't just ignoring my warnings. He was hiding something. I didn't open the directory that night. Not yet. Maybe it was fear, or maybe a tiny, desperate hope that Daniel wouldn't betray me. That there was some logical explanation for why a restricted root folder existed under my credentials. The next morning, the office buzzed louder than the servers. Daniel was in full showman mode, strutting between cubicles with his espresso and his ego, tossing out praise like confetti. Great work, team. EOS is on track for launch, ahead of schedule. Ahead of schedule? I froze. We were weeks behind. Half the automation scripts hadn't even been validated. But no one questioned him, not Jenna from DevOps, not Ravi from security. They just nodded, smiled, and returned to their screens. Daniel caught my eye from across the bullpen and winked. That's when I noticed it, the subtle shift. The easy buddy charm was gone. In its place, a silent warning, don't ask questions. At lunch, I tried to bring it up gently. Hey, about the EOS rollout. He cut me off mid-sentence. Relax, Eli. I've got it under control. Control. That word stuck to my ribs like bad coffee. Over the next few days, the red flags started piling up. Tiny things. The company's Slack channels suddenly had new private groups, ones I didn't have access to, despite being lead systems analyst. Meetings were held without me. Memos got lost. Then came the email. Sent from Daniel's address but time-stamped 2:47 a.m. It contained nothing but a system command. Sudo init_root, silent. No signature. No subject line. Just that. I confronted him the next morning. You working late? He didn't even look up from his laptop. Wasn't me. Probably an automation test. You know how these scripts get mixed up. Except they don't. Not mine. That night, I stayed late again. The air felt different. Heavy, charged. The janitor had already finished his rounds, leaving the faint smell of lemon disinfectant hanging in the hall. I sat there, staring at the screen, replaying every word Daniel had said over the past week. Relax, Eli. I've got it under control. He was changing, or maybe he always was this way, and I just refused to see it. The next day, during a board presentation, he credited himself for the stability upgrades I'd spent months building. My name never crossed his lips. I laughed it off in front of the team, but something in me cracked, quiet and invisible, like the first fracture in glass before it shatters. Later that evening, as I packed my bag, Jenna from DevOps walked by and whispered, "You didn't hear this from me, but Daniel's been having private calls with the CTO. Something about reallocating access privileges." My throat went dry. When I got home, I finally opened the /eos_root/directory. Inside were dozens of encrypted files, all tagged with my ID. And one of them was labeled failsafe_protocol_fan.log. I opened the file, half expecting gibberish, maybe system logs or backup data. But as the code decrypted line by line, my stomach twisted. It wasn't just a log. It was a timeline. Every line detailed my activity, every login, every commit, every private note I'd left in the dev environment. All timestamped, all archived under a label that read, Contingency Documentation, Misconduct Investigation, E. Tran. I scrolled, numb. There were screenshots of console errors I'd fixed months ago, deliberately taken out of context. System alerts stitched together to look like negligence. Even internal messages between me and Daniel, edited to twist my words. He wasn't just stealing credit. He was building a case against me. A scapegoat. The final entry hit like a punch. If system instability occurs post-launch, responsibility defaults to senior systems analyst Eli Tran, as per internal protocol. Signed, D. Holt. I sat there, frozen, watching my entire career unravel on the monitor. The man I'd trusted, defended, was engineering my downfall, line by line. It all made sense now. The secret meetings, the midnight emails, the sudden exclusions. Daniel was setting me up to take the fall if Project EOS failed. And when it inevitably did, he'd stand before the board, feigning disappointment, pretending to be the hero who did everything he could. I wanted to storm into his office that night, to scream, to make him face what he'd done. But I didn't. Because rage is loud, and revenge needs silence. Instead, I copied everything. Logs, emails, backups, even his hidden encryption keys. I transferred them to a private offline drive and slipped it into my jacket pocket. My hands shook the entire time, not from fear, but from something colder. The next morning, Daniel called an all-hands meeting. His tone was polished, rehearsed. As you all know, EOS goes live tonight. We've worked hard, but a few internal inconsistencies have caused some delays. Thankfully, we've isolated the source. He turned to look straight at me. Eli's been under a lot of pressure, and unfortunately, some of his systems didn't meet compliance standards. We'll handle it internally. The room went silent. I could hear my pulse in my ears, a steady, furious drumbeat. He smiled. That fake, polished grin he wore for shareholders. But don't worry, everyone. I'll make sure we get this back on track. A few sympathetic glances turned my way, but no one spoke. No one ever did. That's how the corporate machine works. Efficient, merciless, obedient. I left the room without a word. Walked past the glass walls, the glowing monitors, the hollow applause. My reflection followed me, tired eyes, clenched jaw, the weight of betrayal settling into my chest. That night, I sat alone in the server room, my sanctuary turned prison. The lights hummed softly above, cold and indifferent. And as I stared into the blinking LEDs, a thought formed, sharp, certain, electric. If Daniel wanted to make me the villain, I could show him what a real one looked like. The night after Daniel's public humiliation of me, I didn't go home. I sat in my car, engine off, staring at the glow of Virion Tower through the rain. My badge still dangled from the rearview mirror. My name, Eli Tran, now just a placeholder for blame. Every drop that hit the windshield sounded like another word I couldn't say in that meeting room. I replayed everything in my head, the long nights, the weekends sacrificed, the way Daniel used to clap me on the shoulder and say, "Couldn't do it without you, buddy." Now I understood. I was never a colleague to him. I was a buffer. A fall guy with a smile. The anger was there, simmering, but buried under something heavier. Grief. Grief for the person I used to be. The one who still believed hard work mattered. I don't know how long I sat there, but when I finally looked up, dawn was breaking, that pale gray light that makes everything look colder than it is. I unlocked my phone and scrolled through old messages. One from my dad caught my eye, from years ago. "You can fix anything, Eli, just don't let people break you in the process." I hadn't thought about him in years. He'd been a network engineer before me, always calm, always methodical. When I was a kid, I used to sit beside him while he repaired circuit boards in the garage. He'd hand me a screwdriver and say, "Remember, son, every system has a weak point. You just have to know where to look." That line hit me like a reboot command. Every system has a weak point. And Daniel's system, his shiny, deceitful empire of half-baked code and corporate manipulation, was about to show its cracks. By the time I walked back into the building, something in me had changed. I wasn't there to plead innocence or win back trust. I was done proving my worth to people who profited from my silence. I was there to observe, plan, strike. I spent the next few days moving quietly, copying server configs, tracing Daniel's access trails, noting which accounts he'd hidden under aliases. I even found a few unregistered endpoints tied to external IPs, off-site servers hosting EOS backups that he hadn't declared to the board. He wasn't just setting me up. He was selling EOS data. Proprietary infrastructure, probably to a competitor. The realization didn't make me angry. It made me steady. Because now, I had proof, and a purpose. That night, as the office lights dimmed and the hum of the servers filled the silence, I placed my hand against the glass door of the server room. The air was cold, electric. "All right, Daniel," I whispered. "You built your empire on my code. Let's see how it runs without me." I turned off the lights, walked out, and didn't look back. But inside, a single thought burned clear and bright. I won't rest until every lie you built collapses, right on top of you. Revenge, I learned, isn't cinematic, it's arithmetic. Quiet additions, careful carries, a final tally that leaves no room for doubt. I stopped acting like a betrayed employee and started operating like an investigator with a deadline. I couldn't rely on rumors or my own word. I built a chain of custody. Every suspicious file Daniel touched got duplicated and hashed. I archived the off-site endpoints I'd found, then traced payment trails through vendor invoices and invoices metadata. I used stale developer accounts as bait, tiny, innocent commits with embedded watermarks only I could detect. When the CI pipeline ran those commits, they phoned home with the IPs and timestamps I needed. Loyalty at Virion had been brittle, but it wasn't gone. I didn't recruit a mob. I made careful trades. Jenna from DevOps owed me for sticking up for her when she'd been blamed for a deployment snafu. Ravi in security still muttered about unexplained access escalations. He liked puzzles more than promotions. I slid them copies of sanitized logs and nothing more than the truth they could verify themselves. When they saw the anomalies, they didn't cheer. They widened their eyes and quietly nodded. That was enough. Daniel controlled the narrative. So I took control of the scaffolding around it. I created a phantom audit trail, legally obtained, technically airtight documentation that showed deliberate tampering with compliance records. I flagged discrepancies to the compliance mailbox using a throwaway account tied to a vendor email address Daniel had used in past side deals. The mailbox generated tickets. The tickets generated timestamps. Those timestamps would later show someone lying, and the proof would not be deniable. I targeted the parts of Daniel that weren't code. He loved applause and control more than money. I leaked a carefully crafted rumor to a junior exec he admired, a whisper that EOS had a surprise feature that would make the board ecstatic. He fell for it, bragged in private calls, exposed himself in hasty emails, and, as predictable as daylight, cut corners to accommodate the imaginary timeline. Each corner left fingerprints. Every move was designed to look like coincidence or an overzealous push for innovation. Daniel's arrogance did the rest. He kept talking, kept centralizing access, kept hiding things under the same sloppy aliases. He believed himself untouchable because he had convinced himself he was already 3 moves ahead. Me. I kept my distance. I stopped responding to his jokes. I answered only when necessary, with the same polite efficiency that had once been my armor. People began to call me quieter, colder. That was fine. The quieter the river, the deeper it runs. On a rain-thin Thursday, Jenna texted, "We've got the off-site creds. They're live now. Want me to pull a staging snapshot?" Ravi added, "Compliance opened an inquiry. They cited anomalies." My phone buzzed like a countdown. I sat in the dim glow of the server room, thumbed the encrypted drive in my jacket, and watched Daniel stride by through the glass with a swagger that made my skin crawl. He believed the storm would pass. He didn't see the snow we were packing. Outside, the city lights were steady and indifferent. Inside, I felt the pressure building, like a kettle on low heat that no one notices until the whistle starts. Something big was about to explode. The day was engineered to look like celebration. Investors, board members, and press filtered into the glass-walled auditorium under banners that read EOS, the future of uptime. Daniel paced like a man already photographed for the cover. He had the grin, the cufflinks, the practiced cadence. He also had one fatal blind spot. He'd forgotten the people who actually knew the systems. Jenna and Ravi sat 2 rows back. Their faces were calm but unreadable, the kind of calm that follows a plan you've rehearsed in the dark. I stood at the rear of the room, an invisible witness with an offline drive hidden beneath my jacket and a phone ready to play what would be the last, undismissible evidence. Daniel took the stage and delivered the first lie with a smile. "EOS is live," he announced, hands wide, "and we've already seen fantastic initial throughput." Cameras flashed. He gestured to a demo terminal on stage, a glittering, controlled window into a system he thought he mastered. That's when Jenna acted. She'd been shepherding a puppet service into the public staging environment, one of the dummy commits I'd seeded with a tiny watermark. When the demo terminal queried that service, it phoned home, and the endpoint returned a file, a neatly packaged archive of off-site transfer receipts, vendor payments, and the exact external IPs tied to Daniel's alias accounts. She had also configured the staging console to render the archive as a downloadable report on the demo screen. The auditorium watched, transfixed, as the demo terminal populated. External transfers detected, 42 files. Murmurs rose. Daniel's smile faltered. He clicked, hands suddenly searching for script lines he had no time to fabricate. Ravi did the rest. Quietly, he escalated the compliance ticket live, the one I'd seeded through the throwaway vendor account. The compliance portal sent an automated notification to every board member's inbox and also pinged the on-stage presentation with a red alert. Unauthorized data exfiltration, investigation initiated. Daniel tried to salvage it. He launched into a practice denial, but his voice lost its rhythm as one investor opened an attachment and allowed read a payment trail directly from a shell account that mapped to Daniel's off-site endpoint. The room contracted into a single focus. The screen. Then the servers reacted. It began as a polite beep, the same sound I'd first heard months ago, that soft signal that something minor had tripped. This time the beep multiplied into a chorus. Rack alarms, failover warnings, the emergency lights bathing the auditorium in thin red. Project EOS, star of the show, began to cascade into error messages. Services that Daniel had promised were fail-proof, went staggered, then fell. People stood. Phones recorded. Daniel's face, the face that had smiled his way through promotions and press, drained of color as logs we'd planted streamed across the presentation. Timestamp transfers, edited compliance notes, and most damning, a voice recording of him authorizing an unsanctioned push to the off-site endpoint at 2:47 a.m. He stammered, then turned to the board with wide, pleading eyes. "It's not," he began. No one finished the sentence for him. The board chair closed a laptop, then another. Investors who had once clapped now whispered. The press smelled blood. Silence followed the alarms quicker than the chaos. The servers went dark one by one, the auditorium's hum replaced by an almost holy stillness. In that vacuum, every eye found Daniel. He looked like a man who'd finally heard the verdict he'd been writing for someone else. I stood there, the offline drive warm against my ribs, and felt the weight of months unspool. There was no triumphant shout, no crowing. Only the slow, ancient sound of justice doing its small, precise work. Outside the glass, traffic continued. Inside, the last polite beep cut through the hush, a tiny punctuation mark before the silence settled like snow. They escorted Daniel out that afternoon. No shouting, no handcuffs. Just the slow shuffle of a man realizing that silence can hurt louder than any accusation. He didn't look at me. Not once. Maybe he knew. Maybe he finally understood that the same man he'd called Buddy had been the one holding the mirror up to his empire. By evening, Virion Tower was quiet, eerily so. The EOS servers were offline pending audit, half the staff sent home under operational review. I walked the corridors alone, the same halls where I used to measure my worth by Daniel's approval. The same halls where I'd once stayed late to fix his mistakes. Now the monitors glowed with error logs, red lines of truth that no one could erase. I stopped by the server room. The hum was weaker now, but still steady, like a heartbeat refusing to die. I laid my palm on the glass, just like I had weeks before, and whispered, "We're clean again." Jenna and Ravi kept their distance in the following days. They didn't need to say anything. We'd all played our part. I didn't seek recognition. The board didn't offer it. That was fine. My justice wasn't about applause. Daniel's name disappeared from the company portal within a week. His LinkedIn went private, his press photos quietly pulled. Word spread that he'd been terminated for breach of confidentiality. Rumor said he tried to spin a new startup, but no one would back him, not after the audit findings leaked. Turns out, once you're branded untrustworthy in tech, even the cloud won't host you. And me. I was offered a promotion, ironically, to Daniel's position. I declined. I didn't want to become what I'd fought. Instead, I joined a small cybersecurity firm across town, one that actually listened when I said, "It's not ready." Sometimes at night, I still hear that single beep in my head, the sound that started it all. But now, it doesn't haunt me. It reminds me. That warning tone wasn't just a system alert. It was the universe whispering, "Don't ignore the signs, even the small ones." Because betrayal rarely begins with a crash. It starts with a silence that no one questions. I leaned back in my new office chair, the city lights reflecting off the window, and smiled faintly. Daniel had taught me one final lesson, not about systems, but about people. When you build your success on lies, the crash isn't an accident. It's a scheduled event. Have you ever warned someone, only to be ignored until everything fell apart? Share your story in the comments. I read every one. And if you want more tales of betrayal, karma, and poetic justice, backhand index pointing right, subscribe and stay tuned. The next story drops soon.